Hello and welcome to another video on the Next fundamentals. And in today's video, I'm going to make a quick recap of the goal of today's video, as well as the getting started as a way to make yourself familiar with this particular course, this particular technology. What are the strategy and techniques that we're going to learn as we build using Next.js as a way to offer to others. So the point of today's video is to make a quick recap of the getting started as well as the introduction to Nest.js so we can understand and also talk about it when we need to explain that to tech savvy or business people. Okay, so this course is made by the Next.js creator, which is Camille Miss Liwick. Okay, Camille Miss Liwick. I think that name comes from Pakistan, something like that. Might somewhere from the Balkans. And Mark Piesak, Next.js core team. So Camille Misiliwick and Mark Piesak. And again, the goal of this is to understand what is the problem that Next.js is solving and what are the strategy and techniques that they are using. That's the entire reason of using Next.js. Okay, and how we can benefit from it. Alright, so because this course is you have to sign a user agreement, which the TLDR of this is that uh, you are only able to purchase one license, and by purchasing one license, you are able to hold uh, your videos to yourself because they're going to continuously monitoring the IP. If they find multiple logins, the user will be flagged. So the academy doesn't allow to copy, distribute, or otherwise mm, reuse, resell, recreate in any any material presented in the school, regardless the language, platforms, uh, offline workshop, or any other, right? Offline workshop on any platform. So the thing here is that you're going to look at this course. This is for you. You shouldn't even show that. And because of that, we're going to now take notes of this. Okay. So this is just only as a way to, so this video and this series of videos is Next.js. This is me taking note of Next.js. All right, good. So because of that, we're not infringed in any user agreement policy. So first we'll look at the introduction to Next.js. And that is, well, so what are the things that we're gonna cover here in Nest.js from top to bottom? So that's the approach. So we can getting started to create this enterprise grade application with Next.js. So here we're gonna see from the basics and go to the advanced topics of how can we use Next.js. So the reason of looking at Next.js course here, especially the getting started, is that first we need to look at an overview of Node.js because Node.js it was designed with a minimalistic setup. It let developers um, so developers must be charged. The developers must the developer must be charged on setting everything uh, that they want or need. So this is something that uh, they must be responsible for setting the API routes, setting the route handlers, setting the error handling, middleware, WebSockets, and also the co-organization, project folder structure. and naming conventions. So because of that, Express come come out and say, hey, we would like to make our life much more simpler when doing this kind of things. So, however, it still requires a lot of configurations and effort from developers. So, because of this double source edge, it creates a potential problem, especially as you scale your application. What does it mean? If you think about this, because as a developer, when we have to create these kind of applications, that is, we are responsible, especially if you're using Node, we are responsible for things that I already mentioned, from the bare bones, like co-organization, project folder structures, and naming conventions, to more top level stuff, like the API routes, the route handling, uh, and error handling, WebSocket, and all of these kind of things. So Express say, hey, I'm going to make your life much more simpler by offering you a framework, a way of doing things, an abstraction from that, but you have to configure this. So this thing, the way of configuring things um, can be cumbersome, especially as your application grows. So Next.js offer is a convention over configuration approach, especially for building enterprise grade applications. You may wonder, what is this kind of thing that first Next.js offer and the type of application that we can build? First, so using Node.js, it focuses your attention as a developer on the applications rather than the implementation details. And that include is setting TypeScript, uh, setting TypeScript, API routing, error handling, um, middleware setup, and so on, even with WebSocket, that kind of thing. The promise of Next.js saying, hey, I'm going to handle all of this for you, all of these common configurations, okay? So the API routing, middleware, error handling, WebSockets, setting TypeScript. I'm going to handle all of this for you out of the box, following a convention, while you can focus your attention on building this type of applications uh, that enterprise needs to, like REST API, web service, uh, REST API, REST API, microservice, GraphQL endpoints, WebSockets, CLIs, and cron jobs. So as you can see, especially because I'm working on that particular company, that actually they are using is that the CLI as part of the internal tool to set up an infrastructure. That's just a fancy name to say they are just pulling all of the repos and install the dependency and run the application unnecessary on Docker. Okay, it's like fetching all of the so copy all of the copy all of the data, install the necessary dependency, and then run it. Okay, so because of that, and this is just one of the type of application that we can use or that enterprise needs to. So for example, CLIs as a way to handle this internal behaviors, okay, to speed up and streamline their process. So the CLI, or they want is to set up your a WebSocket, perhaps a microservice, or a RESTful or a REST API, perhaps a Chrome job. Okay, so this type of applications, as they grow, the idea here is that with using Next.js, make your life much more easy to test, maintain, and scale. allegedly. Okay, this Next.js, and because this offer a set of abstractions, again, too much abstraction is the enemy of the good maintainable code. If you want to abstract things, I will go after 3 or 4 times when I see that thing repeated. Okay, so Next.js is this. That's the value proposition of Next.js. Take a look at how you can now create enterprise-grade applications. Recognize that doing on barefoot using Node is something that they give you with a flexibility to do that, which means that you as a developer can create these kind of applications. So you're in charge of from naming convention, co-organization, project structures, and also more top level things like in the case of web application or web servers like the API routes, the route handling, middlewares, error handling, and so on. So Express come and say, hey, I'm going to make these things much more easier, but it requires a lot of configuration. Yeah, totally, completely. Yeah. So this configuration, okay, is like pretty much when you move out to a new apartment or when you fly to a new city or to a new country. So you must have now to carry out all of your stuff, yeah, to carry on all of your stuff, and now deploy that in the new place. And all of these things, all of this uh, unpacking, so packing and unpacking is something that is take time and something that doesn't provide too much value, especially as you build your application. So Next.js say, hey, I'm gonna make your life much more easy by following the convention of the configuration to help you to now focus on this kind of applications development, as I mentioned before. So the whether it is a WebSockets or REST API, microservers, CLIs, cron jobs, in a way that is easy to maintain and scalable and testable. That's the premise. So because Next.js is a plugin that you can use not only on Express or Fastify, okay, it's platform agnostic, so you can use that to build other type of applications, or you can create models, okay, because Next.js provide the ability to create models platform agnostic, meaning that you can create these several code or models that are not only going to work on Express and Fastify, which is something that that's the primary concern from them. That's the main goal of this next, but also for other type of applications. Okay, so you can create this model for WebSockets or GraphQL endpoints, CLIs, cron jobs. Again, this is just the common type of applications that company need. Perfect, perfect. So in this focus, we're gonna create in this focus in this course, we'll be focusing on creating a REST API. Okay, okay, that makes a lot of sense. So let's go for it. Let's go, let's go, let's go. So it all start with a CLI. It all start with a CLI. Installing the CLI. Installing next CLI. So anytime I think of a CLI, think of that as like Swift like a Swiss knife. No, think of this like a swift knife, like a swift. Think of it like a swift knife, you know, that kind of thing, like a swift knife. All right. So yeah, or like a swift knife for any home utensils. Okay, home appliance. No, it's not home. Home appliance. Um, mm, cookware. Uh, it is cookware, but they also call that like cookware. Yeah, cookware. But there was another thing, that they call them. Okay. Anyway. Um. Yeah, any cookware. So when you think, so a good example or a good analogy of the CLI is like think of the home appliance. Think of it like cookware. Okay, it's like, oh, this is all of the things that I need to that it provides me. Here we are, installing the next CLI.
Before we get started in this course, let's make sure we have a recent version of Node.js on our machines. If you don't have it installed already, please check the lesson description below to get it set up, or visit the official website at nodejs.org. We can check what version of Node we have installed at any time by opening up our terminal and entering node-version. Make sure you have either the most recent LTS or current versions installed.
Okay, so install Node and make sure you have the latest version of it.
At the time of this recording, those will be versions 12 or 13.
And at the time of this, yeah, at the time of this note, we'll be using 20.12.
Great! Now that we have Node on our machines, let's get Nest set up. Let's install the Nest command line interface, or CLI, by entering npm i-g at nestjs/cli.
Okay, okay. So if we take a look at Next.js here, now go back to, let's go to ODSL here, Visual Studio Go. Let me open up my code editor. Da-da-da. Okay, here I'm going to create is make their courses. Okay, and then on courses, here I'm gonna have is this. So this will be my courses from Next.js. Let's say make there Next.js. Okay, Next.js, and let me open up here this. All right. Okay, so now that we are here, it is time for us to check which version we have. We have 20 like that, and we also are going to install is npm install as a global. We're going to install this CLI globally. All right. I think you can watch the code section. No. What about now? There you go. Now you can see it. That's right. And okay, much better. So wait for you to see what I'm doing here. Not that much. There you got it. There we are. Okay, so we were going to install this, and this symbol in the context of node means that this is part of a group of package or organization or individuals. And in this case is the NestJs CLI. That's exactly what we do. Installing is the CLI.
This setup process should only take about a minute or so. We have the CLI already installed, so we'll skip ahead, but if you're following along, pause the video, come back when everything's finished.
Okay, now it's the loading all of this package from that particular organization or group. Okay, that's what we have here. So we can also ask ChatGPT about this. What does it mean, the at symbol in npm? All right, scope package. So be more technical, this is called is scope packages. This is a way to tie to a specific organization or owner, right? So in this case, this scope package, which is their proper name, and I want to use this, the proper name scope package here in npm, which is scope, pretty much like that. So that's the proper name of using that. So because we were installing is npm here as a CLI, the at symbol, means um, the at symbol refer to scope package, okay, which is tied to an owner or organization, yeah, which is tied to an owner or organization. So in this case, Next.js or. That's the whole point of this. That's interesting, that's great. Scope package here. If you can have a deeper look at that, you can, as a way to make yourself familiar to that, how you can install some scope package or retrieve some of them. Or also is that how you can publish them, okay? How you can publish them. So scope package is a way of how you can now doing that. You log into the npm register, as well as you put the scope, all right, as a flag. Scope have a many to one relationship with registry, which is you have one registry or one domain. In this case, they call this registry. You have one registry and multiple scope, exactly. Okay, one register per multiple scope, but a scope only ever points to one register. Okay, you can also associate scope with a registry using npm config. And then, well, finally, any npm publish for the package name contains the scope will be published to that register instead. Again, this is how you specify which is the domain or the register you want to type this scope package. You can have as many scope packages that you have. For example, in the case of Angular or Vue or React, or in this case, Next. So, all right.
Once it's done, let's make sure Nest installed correctly by entering Nest-version.
Okay, so this is a way to now check if we actually install the proper version. Now they are in the version 10.
If you see a version number come back, great. The Nest CLI is good to go. But let's take a quick step back. What is the Nest CLI? Well, the CLI is a companion tool for Nest.js that helps us generate files, run, compile, and even bundle our applications.
Okay, this is just describing is okay, but what is a CLI? This is just describing is this is is a bunch of tools that comprise, in the case of Next, okay, but usually it's a bunch of tools uh, that comprise uh,
What is the Nest CLI?
or in this case is not a CLI in general, because CLI is this set of cookware, as I mentioned. But in the case of Next, you may wonder what. Okay, but what what is the next? What is the Next CLI? Okay, so it's a bunch of tools.
Well, the CLI is a companion tool for Nest.js that helps us generate files.
Exactly. So it's a bunch of tools that comprise generate file generation, file generation, uh, compilation, and bundle your app. So pretty much is this, and as you can see, this is a common pattern in the vast majority of the CLI. Vue, for example, actually do that. It's file generation and compilation, as well as build your app,
Files, run,
even in React as
compile,
well.
and even bundle our applications. It's packed with a lot of great commands, but don't worry, you don't have to memorize them all. Just use the command nest-help at any time to help you visualize all the great things you can do.
Okay. If you want to look at the commands you can use, take a look at take a look at next or run this next help. Run in your terminal next help.
With the Nest CLI.
Okay. So far so good, right? It's like, yeah. So next next CLI is a bunch of file generation compile tool, hmm file generation compile tools, and bundle your application and bundles to build your application. And as you can see, all the CLI options that they can offer to you. Generate a Nest application, build next application, run next application. Things started to make sense. Display next project info, add support to an external library to your project, generate a nest element, uh, schematic available on NestJs schematic collection, application, generate a new application workspace, generate a new class, configuration file, controller, decorator, filter, gateway, interface, gateway, guard, intersector, interface, library. Generate a new library within a monorepo, middleware, interesting, model, pipe, provider, resolver, but this is from GraphQL. Generate a new crew resource, something that you actually want to do that. Service, generate a service declaration, and a sub app. As you can see here, for example, anytime you run the application or generate a class configuration with a controller, for example, routes or decorators, another good example is guards, interceptors, interface, middlewares, middlewares, and resource. This kind of thing is quite repetitive. So you want to shrink the amount of time you have to do that. So by using this nicely inconvenience, okay. So by using this nice and convenient automation when it comes to create your application, okay, that's right. Now things are starting to make a lot of sense. Why this is important? Because as you can see, the idea here is that by using this kind of conventions, provided by any framework, any tool, as long as you understand the fundamentals and what this thing offer to you, now you can say, okay, now that I dedicate time to learn this, what is the value proposition? What is the ROI of this? So allegedly here is to make your application highly testable, scalable, maintainable, and scalable. Because it provides you all of this, particularly boilerplate or this things that allow you to speed up the featured implementation or the features application without having to worry about the um, implementation details. However, you must know what you're doing. That's all what I'm gonna say. Okay.
Now that we have the Nest CLI installed, let's utilize it.
So next. So the next section is this. Installing Nest CLI, and then you got is generating our first Nest.js application. Exactly. Generating our first Nest.js app. Exactly. Generating our first Next.js app. That's right. Mm-hmm. Okay. Let's go. Let's go.
Create our first Nest application. The Nest CLI is going to be doing all the heavy lifting for us. file structuring, installation, configuration, and so on.
Hmm. So the CLI, and this is also important to recognize what is doing behind the scene. What is all of this command is doing behind the scenes. The CLI, when we generate a new application, is doing all the heavy lifting for us, which is just as a way to mention a couple one, file structuring, file structuring, uh, file structuring, oh my god, installation, exactly, installation with L, file structure, installation, configuration, and so on. Okay, all of these things are quite annoying doing that barefoot. If you haven't do that, I invite you to do that. You're gonna learn a lot.
To create our first application, let's head over to our terminals and enter in nest new. Now the CLI is going to prompt us, what name do we want to use for this new project? Well, throughout this course, we're going to be creating a REST API for a Foursquare-like application that's all about coffee.
Okay, so run next new, run in your terminal next new. Okay, here we are going to run our app. Here we're going to build a Foursquare like application, like REST app. What happened with Foursquare, bro? Because Foursquare is trying to survive. That's the only thing that I can say. Squareface, Foursquare is trying to survive. Foursquare is trying to survive. 15th anniversary. Or location platform. I think they must become another uh, platform. They're interesting. There is a lot of bald people. Introducing the Foursquare graphic. Oh my god. A lot of their faces is like, for real, it's like, head of global finance, Michelle Morelli, Penn Thomas, Jim Watson. I love that they got a black people here and the Chinese. I love it, man. I love it. But yeah, yeah, Foursquare, bro. Foursquare. Place API Studio. Exactly. Now they create their own set of CLI tools, their own cookware tools. Yeah, cookware. Their own cookware. Most likely they must sell in data. It's like what else I can do? Let me check here. Twitter here. We're a location technology platform. Exactly. They become this. Inventing the future with developer tools, enterprise solutions, and consumer apps. Location intelligence. This is because, yeah, this is because, exactly. This is because Foursquare, Mapbox, SafeGraph, Sales 360, Dataplorer. So this is because stay tuned for data-driven event hosted at Foursquare NGC headquarters. So this is because the vast majority of companies they say, okay, what is the business model? And then is when we have to gravitate to that. And by business model, yeah, it got a bad rap, but business after all is just an exchange of value. That's all. So what is the value that you are exchanging and you are getting in exchange? What do you bring to the table? Pretty much. So that's when things can get mud pretty quickly because you recognize is the true nature of the exchange, of the human exchange. And yeah, it's sometimes not that good. Yeah, sometimes it's not that. It's not what you think it is. That's another thing. It's not what you think it is. Yet, it's not what you think it is. Anyway. Okay, so here in this next course, we're gonna build this for like REST API. Okay,
Let's call it I Love Coffee.
okay. So going back here to the code, we're going to now generate this nest new, and you say, hey, what kind of application would you like to scaffold to create? Well, like, what name it is this? So is I love coffee. Yeah, I do, but I love coffee. And today I didn't take coffee. I love exactly. I love coffee. Okay, and then he's going to ask you as a little bunch of this.
Next, the CLI will ask us what package manager we'd like to use. We're going to select npm, but if you prefer Yarn, go ahead and select the second option.
For in our case, npm, which is has been battle test. So I'm not going to reinvent the wheel, not at all. Even though that you can use another npm package like yarn or PMPN, yes, they have proved that they, in the case of PMPN, is performing NPN, which is yes, of course, it can do that.
Now we can see that the installation process has started. This might take a minute or so, since Nest is not only going to be scaffolding our entire application, but it's even installing all the dependencies and much more, all without us having to lift a finger. Once everything
Hmm.
finishes,
That's one of the things here with here. So because after we run such command, next we'll do all the heavy lifting for us. As you can see, it automates a lot of this process. It is automate it is automate the file structure, file structuring, the file structure, installation, or is auto is or it automate, yeah, it automate the file structure, installation, configuration. So it actually followed these conventions over configuration, something that I'm very quite familiar with. What happened is with this, what happened when you have this set of abstraction is that, again, too much abstraction is the enemy of the good maintainable code. That's why developer criteria, a decision making here is fundamental, is crucial for your life and for the life of others. Okay.
Let's change our directory into our newly created application by entering cd I love coffee. This freshly created I love coffee application has everything we need to get started with Nest right away.
But as you can see here, this is now unfortunately creating is this jest end to end. That's what happened. So it's creating is the ES linter, the prettier, which is great, the next CLI JSON, package JSON, TypeScript configuration, app controller, model, servers, main, the controller, spec, which is for the test, and unfortunately the test is being using so the test that is still by oh my god, the test that is still using is yes for that. Interesting. All right. Okay. Okay. That sounds not good. That sounds definitely not a good idea.
Now that our application's been created, let's fire it up to see it in action. In our terminals, let's enter in npm run start,
Yeah, let's fire it up.
as everything we need to get started with Nest right away. Now that our application's been created, let's fire it up to
Okay. Now that our app is created, let's fire it out. Fire it out. So which means is going to this cd I love coffee, and then you say cn npm run star. Let me see if this actually works. cd I love coffee and npm run dev. What if I say pipe? No. What if I want to run a command after that? Okay. Interesting. Oh lol. Because it's npm run because it's npm run star. Exactly. So hit the terminal with this. Alright. When you do that, then there you got it. As you can see here, it's a starting next application, app models, route resolver, router explorer, next application.
See it in action. In our terminals, let's enter in npm run start and hit enter. This command is going to start up our application, firing up an HTTP server, listening
Start application.
on port 3000. Once the application finishes running, npm run start and hit enter. This command is going to start up our application, firing.
Okay. The command, the npm run start will start up our app. Will start up our app, running it, firing up. Okay, firing up an HTTP server. Okay, because here we are building is this basic REST API. Firing up an HTTP server.
Up an HTTP server, listening on port 3000.
Exactly. Firing up an HTTP server, listening on port 3000.
Once the application finishes running, let's open up our browsers and navigate to localhost 3000, where we should see Hello World.
So if we navigate to that, localhost to this, hello world, there you got it. Okay.
Coming back from our very own Nest application.
Exactly. So what's inside the NestJs application?
With Nest applications, maintaining a separation of
Okay. Because it's like, oh, that's cool, that's great, but what's inside of this? What's inside of next application? Okay. I wonder what's inside of the next application or of a next application. What's inside of a next application?
concerns has never been easier. This is because inside of Nest applications, everything has a defined structure in place, letting you work on the task at hand rather than worrying about organization or convention.
Yeah, you make our life a little bit more simple, but with a trade-off. With a trade-off. Because it's like, yeah, you can use this next CLI as a way to help you easily to up and running to set up and up and running an express application, okay, by abstracting a lot of the configuration, by abstracting a lot of the separation of concern, file configuration, main conventions, folder structure, and that kind of thing. Yeah, because it actually generates all of this. Okay.
With Nest applications, maintaining a separation of concerns has never been easier.
So Next.js app maintain a separation of concern, which is the SOC. Okay. Separation of concern is a software design, it's a principle using programming to separate an application into units. Yeah. Separation of concern, or really media. And also from Wikipedia, separation of concern. Yeah, it's pretty much separation of concern. But is that right? Is exactly separation of concern. So a principle in computer science, in the computer cycle, a principle in computer science where each model, or which each section, where each section do one thing and and one one thing well. Yeah, yeah, separation of concern where each section, exactly where each section know what to do. That's part of this. Yeah, separation of concern is a form of abstraction. Hmm. Describe what is to be computed. Uh, but again, but again, this separation of concern, a principle is computed section where each section knows what to do, knows so where each section do one thing and one thing well. Okay, that's all. This is also part of this AGI, or this, no, AGI is like generative AI, which is very good at generating output, whatever the output is. But is this
This is because inside of Nest applications, everything has a defined structure in place, letting you work on the task at hand.
exactly? It's because it because it creates it creates this
Applications, maintaining
layer.
a separation of concerns has never been easy. This is because inside of Nest applications, everything has a defined structure in place.
It's because it creates a it creates a a defined structure in place.
Letting you work on the task at hand rather than worrying about organization or convention.
Exactly. Letting you allegedly letting you work on the task rather than worry about the configuration, which doesn't actually provide any value to the task, rather than worry about the configuration.
Never been easy. This is
Hmm.
because inside of Nest applications, everything has a defined structure in place, letting you work on the task at hand rather than worrying about organization.
Or convention. Because I have experienced how painful this can be. Yes, it is.
If we look inside the root directory of our project, we'll see a lot of files that you may be familiar with already, such as package.json, tsconfig files, getignore, ESLint configuration, but most notably here, we have a Nest-specific file called NestCLI.json, which we'll dive into later in this course. But the core of our Nest application actually lives in the source directory. So let's open it up and see what we have inside.
The core of our Next.js app lives inside of the source. So if we take a look at snapshot here of this, you save that, and then you say Next.js app next fundamental app, and once you want to add it to this, then you say okay, what's next? Next, okay. And for that algorithm to do that for me, which is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. So thank you. Okay.
Firstly, our entire Nest application starts with the main.ts file. In this main.ts file, we can see that our Nest application is being created via nestfactory.create, taking in an app module. With this application reference, we can now listen and bootstrap our application to port 3000. Think of this file like the main starting file for your typical Node.js application, where a lot of root level work needs to be done. But what was this app module we just passed in? Well, app module is the root module for our application containing everything that our app needs to run. This root module itself can contain other small modules that are all different features or chunks themselves, but when brought together here in app module, we get our complete application. Don't worry if this doesn't totally make sense yet, we'll be diving into modules more later on. Let's open up this app module file and take a look inside.
So the main is the entry point, and as you can see, it followed this Angular nature.
As you can see, we have a regular class here, but with the NestJS app module TypeScript decorator on top.
And as you can see, they're using its class for that. So because this is TypeScript or JavaScript, using a class is a special type of objects. Okay, special type of way of how you describe something. In this case, the app model. Okay, so the main, as you can see here, so the main, so the main here, so the main here is this async function, all right, which is now top level here. What it's doing here, so think of it as the main entry point of an express application, which is Next Factory, where he create this model. So this Nest Factory, which is a concept from design pattern, it say, okay, now that I wait for this to be loaded, which to me is quite interesting, you have to wait for this, which means a promise, which means that you have to wait for all of this model to be loaded, no matter how long it is. You're also loading, you're also async models, okay? After that, you can now listen to the board here and wait for that, so you can do that for you. Okay, Next Factory and app model. All right, okay.
Themselves. Module is the root module for our typical Node.js application reference. We can now listen and bootstrap our application to port 3000. Think of this file like the main starting file for your typical Node.js application, where a lot of root level work needs to be done.
So the main TS file is where a lot of the root, where a lot of the root level work needs to be done. So in our case, like,
Firstly, created via nestFactory.create, taking in an app module. With this application reference, we can now listen and bootstrap our application to port 3000.
In our case, like taking a an app, taking an app model reference. Okay, in our case, like taking an app model reference.
Taking in an app module. With this application reference, we can now listen and bootstrap our.
Exactly. In our case, and I think this is very, very important because why is this important? Especially write things down like this. Let me actually, there's this. So by describing is what you're doing here, you can now develop a sense of what's going on. Next factory is creating, giving the app model reference. And once that is done, you can now listen to this. Okay, so in our case, next is creating, so next is taking an app model reference, and after that is listening to port 3000. The main TS file is where a lot of the root level work needs to be done.
Our application to port 3000. Think of this file like the main starting file for your typical Node.js application, where a lot of root level work needs to be done.
Okay. If a lot of root work needs to be done, like in an Express app. Yep.
But what was this app module we just passed in? Well, app module is the root module for our application containing
Exactly.
everything that our app needs to run.
So app model is this go.
Work needs to be done. But what was this app module we just passed in? Well, app module is the root module for our application containing everything.
Okay, so app model is the root model that contains everything that contains that our app. So apps model is a root model that our apps contains containing everything needed to be run.
Everything that our app needs to run. This root module itself can contain other small modules that are all different features or chunks of
And these root models can contain other features, like error handling, like Middlewares. So things that we look, especially in our when we look at the help. So other features like controller, interceptors, middleware, providers, and that kind of thing. So the root model can contain other features that can be added as chunk.
So, well, app module is the root module for our application containing everything that our app needs to run. This root module itself can contain other small modules that
Exactly. And these root models can contain other features. So these root models can contain other small features, or this root model can contain other small models that that also contain small models that are all small features
are all different features or chunks themselves.
or chunks themselves. So this is just as a way to explain now here. This is what is inside of the Next.js application. Okay, so far we have looked at the main TS, which this is pretty much like what you're doing in the root level Express app. So you can think of this as all the work that it needs to be done at the root level, uh, pretty much like an Express app. But in this case, when you take a look at this particular snapshot here, let me in fact actually do it. Let me in fact doing this. This is the main, the main TS. So here, this app models contains is all the necessary root level work to be done, and this root level can contain small models that are small features of chunk of themselves. If that doesn't make sense, no, it's pretty much like when you are building. So pretty much think of it like Lego blocks of this. All right. So okay, this main TS is pretty much like the root level of Express app, where all of this root level works needs to be done. And in this case is loading the main model that contains uh, everything that your application needs to be run. Makes sense. So far so good. No problem.
But when brought together here in app module, we get our complete application. Don't worry if this doesn't totally make sense yet, we'll be diving into modules more later on. Let's open up this app module file and take a look inside. As you can see, we have a regular class here, but with the NestJS app module TypeScript decorator on top. If you're not familiar with decorators, they are simply functions that apply logic.
Okay. Models here. Like this. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at app models. Mm-hmm. Okay. This is exporting.
But with the NestJS app modules more later on. Let's open up this app module file and take a look inside. As you can see, we have a regular class here, but with the NestJS app module TypeScript decorator on.
Mm-hmm. So we got a class models here with an TypeScript with a TypeScript decorator. call model. TypeScript decorator.
Top.
On top. Yeah. This is interesting how he's describing the code because you say, okay, what is the thing that you're exporting? You're exporting is a class with this thing that we don't know, which is this the decorator, TypeScript decorator on top.
If you're not familiar with decorators, they are simply functions that apply logic. Decorator.
Okay. Decorators are just simply functions that apply logic. Okay. Very, very, very important.
This can be applied to classes like we're seeing here, but also to methods, properties, and even parameters.
Okay. This can be applied. And remember, after all, that TypeScript, the value proposition of TypeScript is like say, hey, I'm going now to give you is all of I'm going now to expand is so when JavaScript ends, that's when TypeScript begins, right? So this is this syntactical extension of the capability that JavaScript offers, and also is static because it allows you to define, it allows you to detect errors at runtime, not at yeah errors at runtimes, not it allows you to detect errors at runtimes, not it allows you to detect error at build time, compilation time, not at runtime. Okay, so this can be applied to classes, functions, methods, and properties. But again, the idea here is to add is a function that allows you to add logic to this. Okay. And even parameters. Holy shit. Properties and even parameters. So based on that premise, what you're saying is that I'm going to add this particular logic to I'm going to add this particular logic to this class here that will contain here.
Nest.js utilizes decorators extensively. You'll be seeing them throughout our code in this course.
NestJs utilize NestJs utilize a lot of decorator in this course.
We can see that within this app module decorator here, we have encapsulated everything that is important to this module's context.
So with this model decorator, we have encapsulated all the code needed for this model.
We even have a few controllers and providers included with our starter CLI application.
But we have encapsulated all of the logic needed for this model.
Take a look at the app controllers throughout our code in this course. We can see that within this app module decorator here, we have encapsulated everything that is important to this module's context.
So with this model decorator, we have encapsulated all the code, all the code.
them throughout our code in this course. We can see that within this app module decorator here, we have encapsulated everything that is important to this
We have encapsulated everything that is important to this model.
module's context.
To this model context. But again, it's all the information here. So we encapsulate all of the information that is relevant for this model context. And again, these decorators, they're just functions that apply logic, and they can apply logic to class. Uh, they can apply object to classes, functions, objects, methods, property, and even arguments.
We even have a few controllers and providers included with our starter CLI application.
Okay. And we have controllers and providers here.
Let's take a look at the app controller and see what it has inside. Similar to the module we just saw, the NestJs controller is also just a class, but with a different app controller decorator on top. We'll be diving deeper into controllers shortly, but for right now, know that controllers are where specific requests are handled by your application. In this controller, we can see that it utilizes the app service provider to help separate out business logic from the controller itself. We'll also be diving into how providers like this work and dependency injection in future lessons. As we said, controllers handle specific requests to our application. We can see that our starter application includes one GET request that is set up for us. This GET request utilizes the app service we just saw, calling the getHello method on it. If we dive into the app service provider here and go to definition, we can see that it's simply returning the string of hello world we saw when we ran our application moments ago. And that's the extent of our project so far. Right now we have a very simple application with just one module. But as we grow this application, we'll see how Nest's modular project architecture encourages us to group features such as routes, services, into their own modules. In the end, this helps us maintain a higher level of reusability, testability, and even helps reduce disorganized code in our applications. Some of this doesn't make sense yet, don't worry. It'll all come together as we build out the application throughout this course. Now that we've seen some of the fundamental building blocks of Nest, let's beef up our sample application to really see Nest in action.
Beef up. Beef up. Meaning. To add weight, strength, or power. Let's beef up. Okay. But as you can see here, okay. This is something, oh my god. This is something that a lot of people, oh shit. This is something that a lot of people, especially that are on the field, oh man, I wish them the best for juniors. I wish them the best. Oh my god. I wish the best for juniors, man. Oh shit. Welcome to the competition. I didn't set the rules. When I came here, all of these things were there. So I'm just trying to understand why do we get here and how do we get here. That's all. That's all. No one owes you an explanation. It's up to you to decide and to learn more about it. So, okay, what is my current um yeah, what is my current objection? Okay, my current objection maybe is in terms of, yeah, I mean, I am quite familiar of what we're doing, especially building Node.js application in Express. If you haven't built a Node.js app from the scratch, or a CLI, or even an Express app, man, you will have a rough time. You'll have a rough time. You got a fun time. A fun time. Okay. Okay. So that was very, very, very interesting because these decorators, they're just functions that apply some logics that are information, holy moly, that are information specific, that are informations relevant to the context. Interesting. Interesting. So because this is a controller, it means that hey, you are behind the scenes creating a route, and then you're going to now assign this route to the get. That's what happens. So you can see here is kind of the logic here when you are now working with TypeScript, because the idea here is to think in terms of types, is to think in terms of what is this, whoever wrote this code, what is the intent of this code. And as you can see here in our models, and then if we take a look at the app controller here, it's like, hey, this is now calling here. This is a way of how do you inject this service, or this dependency injection here. And here you are telling us specific information that are relevant to this class controller. Perhaps behind the scene is saying, hey, I want you to now create is the that will be interesting on what is generated behind the scenes. You know, I would like to see is that you are generating here is perhaps a router or a controller, okay, a route handler, most likely. You know, you're creating is a controller or a route handler, and this is the logic that is that applied to this class. And also, in the case of get, you're saying, hey, this route, we have something called get, that is get hello, okay? And because now this is a way how you can separate concern. Here it's saying, hey, now this app service dot get hello on the service again. As you can see now, you're adding is logic to this particular. So you are adding is logic or information that are important for this class context or app service. And then you are now is say, hey, this method get hello, you're going to return is this. Okay, all right. Not to mention is then how you can test this. Holy moly. All of these tests, I'm assuming that they are slow. Next.js and Vite. Mm-hmm. Holy moly. equalize, fast compiler. And it's because the using is that. Mm-hmm. Holy moly. Holy moly. I get it. And I think the using is that kind of thing. Anyway, yes.
Utilizes the
Okay.
are handled by your application. For an at controller decorator on top. We'll be done. Similar to the module we just.
Mm-hmm. So similar to the model. So let's take a look. Let's take a look at controller. Controller model. Controller model. .ts. So similar to model or to app model.
Saw. A NestJs controller is also just a class, but with a different at controller decorator on top.
Mm-hmm. Similar to app model, an app controller class has another decorator called controller
We'll
controller on top.
be diving deeper into controllers shortly.
That will be dive deeper in the controller shortly.
But for right now, know that controllers are where specific requests are handled by your application.
But for now, know that controller are specific to handle uh, are where specific requests okay are where specific requests are handled by your application. So these specific requests are handled by my application, which is pretty much like the route handler.
In this controller, we can see that it utilizes the app service provider.
This controller utilizes app service provider.
help separate out business logic from the controller itself.
Mm-hmm. To help separate business logic, okay, to help separate business logic from, to help you separate business logic from the controller logic. So when we develop our API design in Node, all right, we look at how important it is to not only define is this particular way of passing data down or to define your route handlers where you only want is to handle is business logic in your route handler when you define express applications. You make sure that when you reach at that point, everything is as expected. You get the data as expected. And then is when you're going to do the business logic to write your query. But here, they now organizing this in all of these different models.
We'll also be diving into how providers like this work and dependency injection in future lessons. As we said, controllers handle specific.
Exactly. We'll be diving into, yeah, we'll be diving into providers and dependency injection later on.
Specific requests to our application. We can see that our starter application does this work and dependency injection in future lessons. As we said, controllers handle specific requests to our application.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So controller handles a specific request on our application. Okay.
We can see that our starter application includes one GET request that is.
We can see that our starter app includes one GET request. Include one GET request. Remember, after all, controller handles specific requests on our application.
Set up for us. This GET request utilizes the app service we just saw calling the getHello method on it. If we dive into the app service provider here and go to definition, we can see that it's simply returning the string of hello world we saw when we ran our application moments ago. And that's the extent of our project so far. Right now we have a very simple application with just one module. But as we grow this application, we'll see how Nest's modular project architecture encourages us to group features such as routes, services, into their own modules. In the end, this helps us maintain a higher level of reusability, testability.
The thing is that GitLab, BWM, Neo4j, Autodesk, Decathlon, IBM, JetBrains, Mercedes-Benz. Mhm. Yeah, I get it. I get it. I get it. Why a lot of this company actually is using this? hmm Because it comes with a lot of content here. Yeah, it comes with a lot of content here. hmm It comes with a lot of content here. Interesting. From the provider, which is just returning a hello world. So it makes a lot of sense here using for this. It makes a lot of sense here using this. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. hmm hmm Holy moly. Holy moly. The less package, the better. And choose which package to update. Oh, this is exactly the freaking tool that I want to go with. Oh my god. Holy fuck. Yeah, doing this is kind of you can automate a lot of this. Yep, yeah. Interesting. Very, very, very interesting. So, okay, let me finally wrap up this section
It
here.
encourages us to group features such as routes, services, moments ago. And that's the extent of our project so far. In GoTo definition, we can see that it's simply returning the string of hello world we saw when we ran our application moments ago. And that's the extent of our project so far. Right now we have a very simple application with just one module. But as we grow this application,
Mm-hmm. And that's it. Yeah, and that's it for our application. Yeah, and that's it for application. For a simple application. And that's it for a simple application. Or for the application created by default, the starter app. And that's it for a starter application.
we ran our application moments ago. And that's the extent of our project so far. Right now we have a very simple application with just one module.
hmm Right now we have a very, which is this is what I'm doing. So right now we have a very specific, a very simple application with just one model. Mhm. With just one model.
But as we grow this application, we'll see how Nest's modular project architecture encourages us.
But as you can see, as we grow our application,
Percent of our project so far. Right now we have a very simple application with just one module. But as we grow this application, we'll see how Nest's modular project architecture.
exactly. But as we grow our application, we'll see how Next.js modular project architecture, we'll see how Next.js modular approach or modular project architecture.
Architecture encourages us to group features such as routes, service.
Okay. So we'll see how Next.js model project architecture encourage to add, encourage, encourage us to group features such as route, services into their own models, into their own models. Exactly. Routes and service and middlewares. And it's encouraged to us. So we'll see how this Next.js project architecture encourage us to group features. Encourage us to group features by routes, middlewares, error handling, services into their own models.
Into their own modules. In the end, this helps us maintain.
Of course, in the end, this helps us to maintain code much more easily. In the end, this helps us to maintain code and test it. This helps us to maintain code. This helps us to maintain a testable, mm, uh, highly testable, reusable,
A higher level of reusability, testability, and even helps reduce disorganized code in our application.
highly testable reusability, and organize organize our code in our app.
Some of this doesn't make sense yet, don't worry. It'll all come together as we build out the application throughout this course. Now that we've seen some of
No,
the
no. It actually makes a lot of sense, but again, it has a particular way of doing things, a particular approach for this. Because remember, the end goal of this is to say, I want to make my applications, especially as we grow, make it easy to test, uh, easy to easy to test, to maintain, and to organize. Okay, help us to organize and scale. hmm Now that we have seen, now that we have seen some of the fundamentals, building blocks, of next, which is the next CLI, what's inside of the next applications, how the next CLI is actually a powerhouse, and everything is inside of the source where you have like the entry point of your application, which is the main TS, that has a class and a decorator called models, where models decorators are just a function that to apply logic. It can be class, it can be objects, it can be class, it can be object, it can be class, it can be uh, it can be class functions. In this case, it can be class methods, properties, and even arguments. Okay, so this particularly model decorator is giving in or is encapsulation information that is relevant for this class, that is relevant in this model context. And if we take a look now at the first, we look at the entry point. Okay, and on the entry point is pretty much like everything you need to, so all the work that it needs to be done to okay, look at all of the heavy lifting that CLI is doing. So the entry point, the main entry point is saying, hey, I'm doing all of this root level work, pretty much like an Express app when you actually do that at the root level. Here we are now creating is a factory in passing the app models, and once all of this, which can also contain the app models, other small models that group other features, and once that is done, now I want you to listen to the pour and bootstrap. So um, and if we take a look now at the models where we're injecting here, this is now a class that has a decorator here called this decorator, TypeScript decorator, which is just a function that applies some code, in this case model, which is data that is relevant, which is data that is relevant to yeah. So data that is relevant or information that is so it encapsulates information that is relevant and important to this model context, which is the imports, controllers, and providers. And here the controller, when you take a look at this, is now saying, hey, uh, think of this controller as um, the way of how do we handle how Index handles a specific requests in our application. How we handle is a specific request in our application, and in this case, the app controller, which will act as the entry point. So here, the controller here is now is logic that is applied to this class to handle a specific request. Okay, so pretty much like the route handlers here. Okay, the route handler here, but now is instead of using that from Express, we're using is TypeScript, and we're passing is this function here, or we're passing is this TypeScript decorator to say, hey, this class, this is the information relevant for this. So this is the we encapsulating is the logic, the information needed for this class. So what is this class is gonna handle that, which is handle a specific request. Mhm. In our case, is the entry point. And here we are injecting now is this provider, okay? And we're gonna take a look at that later on down the course, API servers and providers. And here we are defining is an HTTP GET method, okay, which is going to handle that route, which control handle specific requests on applications. And we can see that our starter app include one GET request, which here we're now using is thanks to the dependency injection. Where here now we're using is this. When we navigate to this provider, we see that it's returning is the hello world. We see that this class is actually returning a hello world string. And that's it for a starter app. The whole point of this is to look at how Next.js is in fact, thanks to the project or thanks to this modular project architecture, when you have all of these different model things, all of these different Lego blocks, looking at how next with this particular approach of model project architecture, it encourages us to group features such as exactly. So uh, with this model project architecture, it encourages us to group up features uh, such as routes, service into their own models. But I think this is the value proposition of the Next.js application. Okay, is the approach, is the mental model here. In the end, if you take a look at this approach of creating models, or if you take a look at the next project architecture, or if you take a look at this modular project architecture that Next.js encourages us to group features like routes, servers, middlewares, error handling, also is data layers or providers. Okay, with this particularly model architecture, a model project architecture, you can see that it helps us to maintain highly testable, easy to highly testable, easy to maintain, reusable code, and organize our app. Holy moly! Now that we have seen some of the fundamental building blocks of Next.js, all right,
Fundamental building blocks of Nest. Let's beef up our sample application to really see Nest in action.
okay, let's going let's going to beef up our app to really see Next in action. Okay, so let's beef up our app. What do you mean by that? Beef up. Let's beef up. Oh, beef up. Beef. Exactly. Let's beef up. Okay, let's beef up. Yeah, that makes okay, I'm hungry. Okay, so let's beef up our app to really see Next in action.
Next, let's beef up our sample application to really see Nest in action.
Hmm. Okay, that's interesting. That'll be all for this video. Take care. Bye bye.